I think this video is going to start out with a little bit of my watch history and a little bit of philosophy and ranting, and finally we'll get on to the reset. Welcome. And it really is pretty easy to quit smoking. It's harder to let it go forever. It's a psychological thing. The physical addiction part is pretty easy. The problem is the cigarette sounds good when we're not smoking it. Once we do light up, it's much less pleasurable than it was in our mind. And this video on top is my Salt Lake investigation video, where I took some photos of the temple. It's really awesome, and I think it's pretty misleading. This thumbnail really gives no indication. I think I might cut out that segment and put it on my off-topic channel. And here, Hangman 1128 put out a good backyard, boots on the ground, kind of exploring different rocks, common rocks that we would see anywhere, showing the differences between bone rocks and tree rocks. Very good presentation. And here, Future of Past, great little channel also, did a nice exploration of the Midmar Stone Circle. It's very interesting. Great boots on the ground, exploratory Tartary style channel. And IRS Media, of course. Always great stuff. I share something of his very soon. Not this one. Fossey flip-flops again. Now he says no mask outdoors. One of my favorite things was somebody sent me something. Let's see if I can pull that up right here. About the issue of masklets. And apparently it's creating Legionella or Legionnaire's disease. And this is when water stagnates for too long. It begins to grow bacterium. And this is a thing. You can leave any water out for a certain amount of time, especially if there's a little sunlight introduced. It just depends. But in this case, a very fascinating share on the dangers of the facial diaper and its association with Legionnaires. Robert Phoenix has a new channel. I don't know if his other one got deleted. The 11th House Media. Bless you, brother. Colm Gibney did an excellent piece of research. And here we can see it. And he actually did have a high-powered digital microscope and threw one of these diapers under there, and this is what he captured. Now, a lot of people said, oh, the wind was blowing, and even he said, when he breathed, it appeared that perhaps it was simply the breath that was sending this fiber for a little ride. But in many cases, you can see that it's actually embedding itself in the other fibers and really wouldn't be affected by just purely air movement, not when it's embedded in this network of fibers already. And very freaky how there are patents on such entities that are modeled after natural parasites and now are a type of machine. So very fascinating. I encourage you to check out Colm's stuff. And here I've let my poor cat's teeth go, and just never was a big cat tooth brusher. And she appears to have some decay and may have to have a few teeth pulled, but she's pretty old, and I'm going to work on it for a couple weeks, and if not, I might just allow the vet to pull the teeth like they want to. Definitely brush your pet's teeth. I like to use a coconut oil. I don't mind the taste, and it's very antibacterial, and personally I use it every night to brush my teeth. And very sad here. I follow a lot of van life, off-grid type channels, and just all kinds of random different things. And this here was a very kind YouTuber that recently took her life, Lee from the Max and Lee channel. And very sad. I was very, very distraught by this. It made me realize you don't even have to know somebody to become very connected to someone. And a great loss, a great tragedy when anybody takes their own life. And I do think life is unfair and a piece of shit, and often have thought of taking my own. But I wouldn't do it for the others. I think it really hurts those around you. And I think it's a good excuse to try something else. And here we can see I watch a lot of this guy, good old Eckhart, and I like Eckhart. And Eckhart was in a similar situation where he found himself hating life and himself and wanting to snuff it. And instead he took a different approach. He killed a part of himself, his ego, and all his responsibilities and ideas of what he should be and what the world wishes him to be, and just let all that die, and sat on a park bench for weeks and found himself in bliss once he let go of all these ideas of the ego. And now he had earned his life. Now it could be enjoyed, actually, without all the bullshit attached to it. False attachments, a false idea, similar to our false history that we so often study. And really, he coming from type of Buddhist-y mindset, without necessarily being a strict Buddhist, as I do, more Taoist. But the idea is that suffering comes from desires of anything, a particular outcome, and this is very Buddhist. And just stop desiring. Doesn't mean you don't aim for something, but you're not attached to the result. And it doesn't mean that you don't push forth in your life, but you're not attached to your life. And then you can actually enjoy it. And Lao Tzu in Taoism says, die without dying and you'll endure forever. And I agree. It said that if we're depressed, we're stuck in the past. If we're anxious, we're stuck in the future. We're not in the present moment. And let the past and the future die. They're not there in this moment anyway. Let them die a good death so that you can live in the moment. And that was a little look at my watch history. And this next share I'm very sad about. It would have been nice to have gotten this in my last video, where I talked about the Dome of the Rock, both in Jerusalem and Chicago. And here Nick has provided us with an excellent picture of some ruin in Washington. And here we go. What is this? Again, this thing could be set amongst the ruins of Pompeii and be perfectly at home amongst the rest of the ruins. And by now I really don't care what they say about anything. I'd rather just look at it with fresh eyes. And what do you think's going on here? Have they just put brick around an old ruin? And yet is this old ruin important and functional? Hence why they're preserving it and also keeping it out of sight. This thing looks like it's at least 500 years old. So I just wanted to start out by talking about these cannonballs. I got a lot of comments saying that it's pretty clear that these are just a stage and a prop. And if they weren't here, people would really begin to ask questions and ask what created these ruins. Because it really seems like the ruins of a high-tech, sophisticated war. And not only that, but everything that we do see standing is a little too advanced for this very early time period of the mid-1800s. Just mind-blowing. And so a lot of people proposed that they were photoshopped. These cannonballs are not really here. And they do look a little strange, really. And really not seeing any particular area that has been hit by a ball. We would surely see some pock marks. But no, I mean up here there's been a massive fire. It's burnt out the roof and the skeleton remains. Here this bridge has just been completely destroyed. I mean we're talking a 15 to 20 foot thick bridge just being obliterated. Giant chunks of, I don't know if this is rebar or some braided wire, but nevertheless, nothing to do with Cannonball. None of this. If only Cannon and Ball could produce so much damage, there would have been no need to further the military-industrial complex for the next 100 years. Oh no, we could have fought every war with Cannon and Ball, just tearing up cities, trashing them, burning them, and rendering them to rubble. And either they are photoshopped in, or they have been neatly stacked here for a photo opportunity. Now people do say that they find them on the battlefield and different war memorabilia, and I have no doubt remains of everything will be found. I only ask, what was the true purpose? And what do you see in this picture? The damn ball is too big to fit in the cannon. Can you see this? So again, what are these things? machine parts, ball bearings, left over from the past civilization? Because clearly this past civilization was wiped out. This is clear. This is a wipeout, and very advanced. Very advanced people dwelt, can I say that? Dwelled in this region. And I think there was a lot more in the skyline. We do see cropping, and we essentially do see photoshopping. Big time in these old 1850 photographs. These windows back here are completely mud flooded, so this place has just been reset, we're told by cannonballs. And this soldier hasn't done a damn thing. All of this happened long ago. And of course these images are just as disturbing as these fires, for example here seen in California. Just stupid. Absolutely ridiculous. If you think this is normal, then you must be fast asleep. This row of trees in between these two sets of homes on either side. How is anything even possible? Trees that don't burn. And here again, cooked out city, roofs, windows, doors, totally burnt out. And then we see trees. Hard to say with this particular photo. This image could be 100 years after this initial reset, and such people roll up and pose for some photos, maybe stack some junk that will serve in the perpetuation of their false narrative. Unclear. And what else could render a city in this condition? Again, I think it comes down to some disruptive frequency, yet always very clean. Clean roads, clean everything. Kind of lending to the EMPCO idea, the EMPCO being a plasma discharge reset event, similar to the idea of the reversing of the poles, but rather reversing of the magnetic field. And apparently when this happens, for a moment there is a sucking effect. And I think this sucking effect would explain why everything looks so clean, such as we can see in this particular photograph. So clean. Where has all the debris gone? This is clearly some kind of super reset. And look how advanced. Look at downtown. And my point is how clean in a time before street sweepers. And this sucking effect could be a possibility. I mean, this thing looks like it has been ripped in half. I mean, just ripped. What causes this kind of damage? Again, they say earthquake and fire, but if that was the case, we would have rubble everywhere, and we don't see that. And one other possibility is the fasces. The fasces, of course, introduced to us by Martin at Flat Earth British. And the fasces is seen everywhere, if you have never heard about it. And we're given a stupid narrative, of course, for this fasces. Some say it was just symbolic, something you'd carry in a battle just to place an extra burden on yourself in the field. But Martin proposed that this was some kind of frequency weapon. And after seeing his video, I had proposed that this little tip reminded me of the end of a Native American flute, which would lend to the idea that this was projecting a sound or a frequency in a certain direction. Again, how exactly this operates, we just don't know. But it's pretty serious and a symbol of the old world found everywhere, corner to corner throughout this realm, and we're really not given a very good explanation. Here's old Georgie Poo with a massive fasces, almost as tall as his very self, and perhaps used in conjunction with this rod. So this thing just is some ass-kicking device. This is not something that's to be taken lightly. And he is so proud to have it by his side, covering it with his coat, his little sword tucked into it. And so old George is wielding the fasces, but yet this is a very ancient symbol, going way back to the false Romans, and always displayed on old art and coinage from modern times to ancient times, just proudly parading around their fasces. And I really feel something intuitively with this fasces, as Martin did, especially the way that everybody has their fasces, really lending to the idea that this is a reset tool, and symbolically one which has gotten less impressive as time has advanced, as we always see examples of in history. The further we move forward in time, the more backwards and primitive things actually become. And I think I'll just end with The idea that we have grand resets, cyclical, and I think the controllers know about these and plan accordingly. But in between we have micro resets, often caused by government and military operations. And this is the case seen here in the Plain of Jars in Laos. And this was shared with me by Peter Gibbons, and I thank you for this, Peter. Something I'll save for another video, but just wanted to touch on the fact that you have these giant jars scattered all over, and local legend tells us there were giants in this region. And what lends to this but the narrative itself, telling us in 1983, during the Indochina War, the US flew more than 580,000 bombing missions over Laos. This is equal to one bombing mission every 8 minutes around the clock for 9 full years. This has left the landscape in some areas of Laos filled with craters. And the real question is, what were they really bombing out here? So that's it for today. I thank you for joining me, and do have a blessed day. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Sorry, maybe I should put the pop filter on. I guess we're live. As often as I do this, I still get a little anxious. What is it to be anxious, but to be worried about the future? Something that we don't know the outcome of. How could we? Unless we were some psychic and could foresee all events. But I'm not. Maybe I have intuition or premonition. Perhaps if I would script these videos, this would also relieve some anxiety, as I would know exactly what I was gonna say. But that would be boring, for me, personally. And I kind of enjoy the spontaneity, and I think it allows for the creator to jump in and offer a few cents when we let our guard down. Now I hope to share something really wild and crazy with you. Here's a nice little share from Jordan. He says in the 1990s they were renovating downtown Niš, Serbia. They found giant skeletons and quickly covered up everything with concrete. An old city photographer by the name of Dusan Tsar made a footprint from the grave, and the rest is gone. And I found that original article in 1990 and translated it here in the Google. And they say a giant cemetery in the center of Nice was discovered in 1990 when an underground passage was dug. Humanoid skeletons of adults and one child were found. The men were nearly 3 meters tall and the women about 2.5 meters. Everything was quickly filled with concrete, and to this day there's not the slightest trace remaining. Today the only evidence of this even happening is this photo snapped by this photographer. And here's that photo. Very interesting. Hard to get a perspective from just glancing at this photo. And here, mind you, these buildings back here and this monument, and we can see that in modern times. And as we know by now, most parks, memorials, golf courses, and many other such designations are actually just cover-ups. And here we're told they were digging a tunnel and stumbled upon this discovery and quickly covered it back up. And here these people are strolling around on a graveyard, a horde of giant bones, while they so innocently run their mindless programs, seeking amusement, entertainment, and consumption. The pillars of modern civilization, anything to keep the people from seeing the truth. I wonder if there's any paranormal effects that can be felt as a result of building parks on dead giants. Let me know if you've been to this park and have noticed anything. Next, we have a share from Nick in DC, and he shows us some anomalies. He shows us the logo of the Army Corps of Engineers, and it's based on this actual building right here, the DuPont Castle. Very suspicious of DuPont for other reasons. And here he shows us these police call boxes that are found all over the city, looking very techy, most certainly decommissioned today, but clearly in the past something of importance and very beautiful for a call box. And another interesting thing about this castle is the DC water supply actually runs right through this castle. And this reminding me of the Chicago Waterworks building, which also didn't just look like a castle, absolutely is a castle. So what is this with water and castles? We in our narrative told that the castle is something built for some silly king and queen, and that's it. That's all that the masses need. Now when they see a glorious structure with castle-esque features, they immediately think king and queen. And yet here are two examples, one in DC, one in Chicago, lending to the idea that the castle may simply be some sort of water tech. But what is certain is there were no kings or queens in America, supporting the idea that the castle is anything but a dwelling, and that's every castle. And here's the castle when they found it. Of course, they'll tell us they built it, and within a year, it would be covered in ivy and looking like it's been burnt. But let's just have a look today. Here we go. Abandoned, boarded up, ivy removed, and soon to be swept clean with a wrecking ball.